If you have an epidural, can you be upright and mobile? So the short answer is yes, you absolutely can be upright and mobile with an epidural, but there's a little bit more around this. Now, I published something back in 2021 all about mobility with epidurals because it's something I'm really passionate about as a midwife. When I qualified as a newly qualified midwife, almost all the women that I looked after were either on their side or they were sat upright in the bed. And then a study came in called BUMPS that we were part of, so we were part of the research. And what it really reiterated to me is that women can be on their knees, they can be on their hands and knees, as long as they can perform a straight leg raise, they feel comfortable to, they are happy to move, and you facilitate that as a midwife by moving all the CTGYs and all the monitors and everything. And there are a couple of units here in the UK whereby they actually help women get out of bed and mobilise. Now, it does depend on the unit guidelines because it needs to be safe to do so. What you don't want to do is have a woman collapse with an epidural because it's very difficult to then get them back up on the bed, and there's obviously harm associated with that. So it's all about being able to perform a straight leg raise. Now, the longer the epidural is in progress, the higher the chance that those legs won't be able to raise because it becomes a much denser block, so it becomes much heavier as time goes on. Similarly, there are some epidurals that make it much more difficult to be able to move. So if you've got something like a combined spinal epidural where that medication means that your legs are much heavier, then no, you won't be able to move as much. Now, what the BUMPS trial did is it gave me the confidence as a midwife to know that women can be mobile and can be upright. And what my normal practice after the BUMPS trial and being part of that was that if a woman or person hadn't been mobile for quite some time with an epidural, I would get them upright and mobile, particularly in that pushing stage. And every 10 to 15 minutes in that pushing stage, as long as they could still do a straight leg raise, they were still okay to do so, I'd help them get into other positions. And that was just my standard practice as a midwife by that point. Me, I personally saw a reduction in the women having less perineal trauma, but also less forceps and 1-2s. And this is supported by the evidence. When I did this publication, one of the most interesting things is that if you are sitting with an epidural at the point of pushing, you are much more likely to need a forceps or 1-2s. In the absolute terms, and the Cochrane database really highlighted this, that if you are only sitting, you're not moving in that pushing stage with an epidural, there's an increased chance of having a forceps 1-2s in caesarean birth. And what this equates to is 63 per 1,000 women more having forceps and 1-2s by sitting down in that pushing stage, compared to if we enable them to mobilise, get onto their hands and knees, get onto their side, move them around. And that is what really highlighted it to me, both in real terms, watching it in real life, in practice, and seeing these women not having as many forceps and 1-2s or perineal tearing, because it makes a big difference, and the satisfaction of women is much higher, and also the pushing stage is much quicker for women as well. It does have to be safe though, and I need to caveat that, because if a woman cannot perform a straight leg raise, if she cannot move, she doesn't want to move, that's okay. But it's highlighting that sitting with an epidural equals a poorer outcome for women and people and babies. And if we as midwives facilitate mobility where it is safe to do so and encourage it, women and people are much more likely to have a spontaneous vaginal birth, less likely to have perineal trauma, less likely to have an episiotomy, and more likely to come out of birth with a much more positive experience.